Hi everyone, my name is Saqina Latif. I'm the co-founder of Persona Theory Games, and today we're talking about our upcoming game called Kabaret.
All right, thanks again for joining us. I think the last time we did an interview was probably a couple of years pre-pandemic, come to think of it.
Yeah, it was actually I think you were the first one to ever interview us as Persona Theory Games.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, so now I just wanted to do this because I wanted to come back and just revisit about what's been going on with Persona Theory games and the upcoming game, Cabaret, your upcoming adventure games. So to focus on the company, now that it's like in the post-pandemic time, has anything changed in Persona Theory's workflow and game designing and studio workarounds and whatnot?
I think it's funny that we found our flow during the pandemic. We really got into working offline, working on Discord, getting our flows right. So it's just continuing our groove post pandemic. I think one of the nicer things is that we can meet up, especially when we want to test certain things with each other, with controllers, see how the other team members play the game. But yeah, it's just for us, it's just maintaining our current workflow.
What are some of the biggest trends or changes you've seen in the gaming industry during the post pandemic period, and how has that affected your works?
I don't. I think Persona Theory has this habit of beating to its own drum, but what we love to see is, I guess, 5 years ago when we created Persona Theory games, there wasn't much uh, indie narrative focus and cultural focus on games, especially in this region. But since then, I feel like there's more and more people trying to tell their own stories through culture, through their own lens, and I think that is the most beautiful thing. Like we are finally standing up and telling our stories in games, and for people around the world to enjoy it.
So, I'm guessing you and your team have traveled quite a bit once the travel restrictions have lifted. So, or haven't you not? Have Could you tell me about the experience, like going out and what you've learned, meeting other game developers and traveling?
I think one of the best things is actually to meet people away from their Twitter icons because I feel like I associate them with their Twitter handles, their Twitter icons, and to meet them in real life has been really great, especially during Gamescom and Level Up last year. That was the most eventful game event that we've been to offline, and just really meeting and connecting with new devs in the region, publishers coming in, friends, reconnecting with old friends as well. I think that's been really great. I think meeting people in real life is always important, especially when we're such a small community in Southeast Asia. For us to grow and thrive, I think we all should know who's in the industry and support each other as best as we can.
What are some of your favorite games you've played recently during your time working on Cabaret? Like, maybe like let's talk about like a couple of years. No, we're not talking about classic games that influence you, like Shinji Mikami's titles. Like maybe
Uh-huh.
2 years, a year back, something you've touched on that maybe could inspire you for your future projects post Cabaret.
I think I'm gonna mention Shinji Mikami again.
Of course.
Ghostwire. I enjoy Ghostwire. I didn't think I would because uh, I thought initially that it was another open world game, but I love what Shinji Mikami and his team did culturally to the map, the ghosts that they put in, and then it's not like his usual games where it's really pure horror and it's scary, but there's a lot of quests that deals with myth and folklore that I think not many people know about Japan and is rooted to their location. So I think those are really great. And who knows, maybe one day Persona might go down that route as well because culture and myth and folklore is in our DNA. But it was really lovely seeing how Ghostwire marries that a little bit of horror, a little bit of mystery, a little bit of adventure. There's funny moments. There's even like things that I learned from the game, like folklore wise, that I didn't know about, poetry as well. I think Ghostwire is I think it's the one that I feel like I that really stuck out to me.
I felt that you were gonna answer with that game because of how Ghostwire is. Is like not scary. It's more like spooky and atmospheric per
Mhm.
se.
Yeah.
And since we're gonna be talking about cabaret in the next question, I guess it's an appropriate segue right there
Yeah.
for people who is probably tuning into this show for the first time. For the uninitiated, what is cabaret about?
Cabaret is about a boy that gets cursed into a monster and thrown into a different world he's not used to, and that is where he will meet all these characters from myths and legends, gods of Southeast Asia, where he has to navigate the complexity of the stories that is going on there to try to figure out who he is and also who he aligns with.
What are your influences when creating cabaret, and how many years has it been since you've been developing this project?
Gosh, I think it's been a long time coming. Like, I remember telling my co-founder buddy that, hey, I want to do something to do a game to do with Southeast Asian culture, especially because personally, growing up in UK, I'm always disconnected with who I am as a Malaysian, and I want to learn more. So he connected us to Edin Koo in Pusaka, Pauline Fan as well, and throughout that work, it kind of really inspired us to see the unseen world that we have here in our own backyard through Kuda Kepang, Mak Yong, and that has really influenced how we craft the story. And the other thing that really influenced us is Opera Jawa by Garin Nugraho. I would say it's Opera Jawa meets Evangelion. Is how I would describe Cabaret.
That's a very apt description from the looks of it. Now, creating a game that's very Malaysian might be a hard sell to outside audiences. So, how do you design or create the game around that? Or do you just go all out and hope people can pick up on its nuances and it becoming a hopeful cult hit in the next few months or even years?
I think it comes with like we just try to tell the best story we can under either our circumstances or our influence or how we feel like we want to tell what is going on in Southeast Asia. But judging from everyone's internationally, everyone's reaction to it so far, what we didn't think would happen was, for example, people in Russia or Ukraine looking at the monster saying that, oh, we have something similar to our culture as well. And then Asian Americans who have not come to Southeast Asia, and maybe their grandparents have told them stories about the monsters, and then they seeing the trailers, they react positively to it. It's like, oh, this is something familiar to us. And I think that is the connection that we didn't think would cast such a wide net, but it has definitely been the one that people have been coming back to. Like, we're excited to see something different, we're excited to explore this unknown region, to know more. And on top of it, I think the story of Cabaret again is Opera Jawa meets Evangelion. Evangelion themes are a lot in it as well. So I think people will resonate, if not with the main character, with one of the other tragic characters that we have in Cabaret.
Now, in one or two words, what would be the theme of cabaret? I mean, obviously not the supernatural, but we're talking more like the story theme and the core and whatnot. Like, if you have to use one or two words from the dictionary.
Mm. Cabaret has many themes, but I guess in three words, the value of life. That will be the most important thing that we're trying to debate about. And well, in a little bit more than three words, it's like we're also exploring humans can be worse than monsters.
So, what creatures are in Malaysian myth that will be in cabaret so far, without spoiling the game, of course?
If you've seen the new trailer, see one character that was not introduced early on until recently, which is Garuda. Garuda is such a main staple in Southeast Asian culture, in Hindu myths, and we're so glad to explore his story because it's such a important part to Jabat's story as well. Well, Jabat, what he is, that is a spoiler, but the other thing that we also have is different monsters from different regions. Like, we have Tikbalang from the Philippines, we have Babi Ngepet from Indonesia, Rangda, which is, I think, a lot of people recognize from the Persona games. My personal favorite is the Caretaker, which is the Harimau Jadian, which is such a important spirit in Malay culture and silat in wayang kulit. And of course, everyone knows Pontianak, the most famous Malaysian ghost. And yeah, that's about.
So, are you planning to go the same route with Fives at Midnights with Cabaret story wise, or will it be a bit more of an uplifting story?
Without spoiling, I think you'll have to experience it on your own. But in Persona Theory games way of writing, there is no good and bad ending. It's just an ending.
Yeah. Alright, the game has a very strong musical component with original songs and a musical score. How did you approach creating the music for Cabaret?
We find musicians that we really, really want to work with. Like working with Samba Sunda has been also like years that we've been planning. Like we've been watching them, we've been listening to their music to get inspired, especially in the early, very early prototype in 2018 to 2019. And the fact that we can finally work with them and actually make one special song for Cabaret, specifically for Cabaret for Jabat. I think that's been a really special moment for us. Also working with Malaysian composers, musicians that we've listened to their music and we wanted to put more highlight into it. So I think that's what Persona Theory Games does. That we find local or Southeast Asian musicians that we really really love the music in, and we think about the projects that we are doing, and we think about how we can highlight them.
Okay. The game's aesthetics draw heavily from the cabaret and vaudeville scenes of the early 20th century, so what inspired you to use this style in the game with your developers and artists?
It came from learning about our history as well, like what cabaret was for back in Malaya, back in Singapore, how the scene was, especially in the old P. Ramlee movies. I think we really want to show a little bit about what goes on without showing too much, but maybe this would pique people's curiosity, like why did we name it cabaret? I think it's not explored much that cabaret is such an important part of our history and culture, especially if you watch P. Ramlee's movies. I hope that will make people want to revisit his movies and see what Malaya was before.
Okay. Now, I've noticed that the game has a number of different gameplay mechanics and some. I mean, apart from the visual novel stuff, we've got the puzzle solving and a few mechanics here and there. So, how do you go about balancing these different elements to create a cohesive gameplay experience, like with the chonka and the other mini games?
Pacing, I guess, a lot of the times each of the tea ceremony will make you really listen to the character stories and what troubles them, and then with later on you get to speak to more of the characters in cabaret, but we're balancing with chonka and guli. I think we just wanted to show people what other games that are there Southeast Asians used to play, and talk over chonka, what do you get over winning certain games. And then with performance, again, it ties back to the cabaret history that we have here in back in Malaya and Singapore as well. So they're all paced out not too close, so enough time for the players to really s- go slowly, contemplate about the questions that we give you. There's no right and wrong answers. There's not even like game over in the game. So just enjoy the ride.
Now, the game also has a strong emphasis on player choice and decision making. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, can you give us an example of how a player's choice can impact the story or characters in the game?
Sure. Again, without spoiling much, even if you win or lose at a game, there's no game over, but that is a choice and it will record as such. And if you do win or lose, or if you choose certain choices, certain characters will like you better and will help you. But then if you choose a different way, certain characters might not survive towards the end of your story.
So, two more questions. What do you hope players will take away from their experience playing Cabaret when it launches? And what do you hope for the game to add to the gaming landscape as a whole?
I hope the players will really resonate with any of our characters. Doesn't have to be the main character. It can be any one of the cast. And I really hope that they get to understand the beauty and the tragic stories that we have here in Southeast Asia. And what I hope more people look at is how diverse Southeast Asia is and how much stories we have and how much beauty and tragedy and stories that we have here. You're just at the tip of the iceberg. Like cabaret isn't the end all be all of all Southeast Asian culture games, and it shouldn't be. We're not even like the gatekeepers of it, but we hope that people would see it and like go look for these monsters in maybe real life. Be careful, but learn who they are, what is their history in real life in relation to our world. Maybe explore more and make new games out of it. I think that's my hope for it, that it will actually pique more people's interest in the unseen world of Southeast Asia.
I'll see if I can tag Shinji Mikami on Twitter. Hopefully, I'll get some ideas.
Yeah, I hope you will come here.
Oh, and the last question would be like, what kind of advice would you give to new studios, especially in Malaysia, who want to stay in the video game industry for a long time?
I have a lot of conflicting answers to this. So maybe number one, think about whether or not you really want to do this, because it's not the easiest road. Maybe you would want to have a stable paying job, like, be a dentist and then be a game dev on the side. But for those who are crazy like us and actually do this full time, I would suggest having resilience and patience, because it's really hard. And one of the things that I learned through my journey is no man is an island. You would need the whole of the community, in terms of not just other game devs, but the players, media, to survive longevity, because we cannot stand on our own. We need the support of the community to be stronger, especially when we are competing with the rest of the world.
Okay, cool. That's a very good answer. All right, good stuff. All right, thanks again for doing this interview. Any shout outs you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
So, Wishlist Cabaret on Steam, Epic, and it'll also be on Xbox on April 5th. Follow us on our social media. You can join our Discord as well to chat with us. We're quite active. Follow us on TikTok. We're also quite active there. And yeah, follow us for more, for because we have more projects coming in the future and more updates about other platforms Cabaret.